Hi, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, and thanks so much for joining us as we go over the best practices to rank your law firm on Google. I'm so excited to be joined by Gyi here. We're just going to throw some nuggets at you today, and we're so glad that you could all make it. So before we get started, I just wanted to point out that we have a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to leave your questions there at any time. We'll save time at the end to answer your questions, and we'll follow up with you directly if we can't get to it. And we'll also send you the recording of this webinar as well. So let's get started. On the next slide, yep. I'm Nina Lee. I'm Senior Marketing Manager here at PracticePanther, which is an all-in-one legal practice management software. And I've just had the honor of building relationships with partners like Gyi to really bring action steps that you can apply to your firm. Gyi, can you tell everyone a little bit about yourself?
Sure thing. Thanks, Nina. So happy to be here. Gyi Tsakalakis, founder and president of Attorney Sync, a digital legal marketing agency, former trial lawyer. And we basically help lawyers use the web to grow their businesses.
Yeah, and for PracticePanther, for years now, we've enabled law firms to automate their practices and help people get more done in less time. We're an all-in-one, seamless, and intuitive solution that helps tens of thousands of legal professionals manage their day-to-day, fast-moving cases. You can manage task workflows, contact matter management with reporting, payments, e-signature. It's all in one within PracticePanther. And Gyi, I'm just really excited to hear what you have for us and to kick us off with how you form a marketing plan and budget for your law firm. So can you get us started here?
Will do. So, and it's one of the reasons I love doing these webinars with partners like PracticePanther, because as hopefully one of the things you'll take away from this is how seamlessly your law practice management should really be working with your marketing strategy. And, one of the first places I always have to start is with a budget. A lot of lawyers, the folks that are attending, in fact, as Nina mentioned, feel free to chat away, ask questions. So, question number one is, do you have a marketing budget at all? And this is from the ABA Tech Report, and like Nina mentioned, we can get you the deck. There's some links in here that you might find useful. But you've got to either decide that you're going to make an investment in money or time into your marketing. Like, no matter what I tell you about ranking in Google or automations with PracticePanther and reminders, those are just tools, and we're going to talk some strategy of how to implement the tools. But I always say to zoom out and think about really like, what's your P&L look like? How much can you invest? And people always, if you twist my arm, like, how much money should I spend on marketing? The answer is I have no clue. But I can tell you that there are all sorts of small business resources. The SBA has a whole thing on coming up with a budget. If you really force my hand, you're probably somewhere between 6% and 20% of your gross profit. So, maybe you want to call it 12 if you want to find a sweet spot there. But it varies based on all sorts of things, your marketing objectives, like where you want to be, where you see yourself being, where you are today versus where you want to go. And the other thing I always tell people too, it's not just about, marketing isn't about just money, it's about your time, right? So if you're looking at your, your financials and you're like, I don't have a lot of money to invest, then you need to carve out some time. But don't forget that your time and time you delegate to people at existing resources at your firm, there's a cost to that too. And so as you're breaking some of this stuff down, make sure you're thinking about the cost of software that you're doing if you're sponsoring events, but get that into some kind of spreadsheet. It can be as simple as a Google sheet. It can be more complicated if you want to, there's all sorts of budget estimation tools and marketing tools. But I always feel like when I have these conversations about marketing, it's really important to start from this idea of forming a budget and tracking a budget, because at the end of the day, that's how you're going to hold accountable both the time, the expenses. If you're working with a vendor or an expert, you've got to have a way to track this stuff and have a plan that's realistic to support your goals. I talk to lawyers all the time that say, hey, I want to dominate my market for, whatever practice area it is, and I have $100 to do it, and I can't spend any time doing it. Well, that's a misalignment there that, you're just never going to be able to resolve without actually getting some kind of budget in place of both time and money. And one of the things too that is great with PracticePanther, I'll let Nina talk about, but your law practice management tool like PracticePanther, it can help support you in this kind of thing, right, Nina?
Yeah, exactly. I love what you said about keeping yourself accountable as you're setting this budget. Now you've committed to spending a certain amount solely on marketing. As calls and leads come through, you need to be on top of following up with those leads. Otherwise, it's just money down the drain. So each time you get a lead, you should have a consistent, proven cadence of following up with them to convert them to hire you. So you can do this easily by setting up reminders for yourself, for other users at your firm, and even your clients for their tasks within PracticePanther. You can set up to 5 reminders per task or event and get alerts as a text message or an email or even a pop-up in the program if you're a user. So for example, you could set up a reminder 3 days after your initial call to follow up with your potential client, remind them, maybe call after 2 days as a next touch point, and so on, to really nurture that relationship. So we really give you the means to remind yourself so you don't lose that really qualified lead.
No, exactly right. And one of the other things I love too, and most of the time when I open up, the quote unquote books at a law firm, one of the most untapped resources is the law firm's existing professional contacts. And so, using like something like PracticePanther to be able to say, hey, look, I'm going to actually set a reminder to contact this former client. Maybe it's on, you can set up a reminder on a birthday, or you can set up a reminder, just maybe make it recurring annually, and you have to decide how frequently you want to stay in contact with folks. But it's just a way to make this, like, so many times we just get busy, we get our heads down, we're working, and we just don't carve out the time to actually, reach out to folks who have already hired us in the past, and people that have referred us business in the past. And so you can use something like the reminders in PracticePanther to be able to nudge you to do that. And it really does make a huge difference. So many times when you set these reminders up and you reach out and actually contact someone, they're like, oh, I'm so glad you reached out to me. I actually meant to call you because, I've got this situation, or I've got this referral that I wanted to send to you. And so it can be as simple as that. And it's really, really effective in terms of, repeat business and growing that referral network. Speaking of referral networks, one of the things we talk about with marketing all the time is really understanding how people search for lawyers. And it's not just, how they search, but it's who they are, what keeps them up at night. Those are the types of things that are in their mindset. And so as we go through some of these tactics for getting in front of your potential client audience, it's so important to remember that, about half of of legal services consumers are going to look for a lawyer through a referral. Now, that might be a family, it might be a friend, might be another lawyer, it might be another professional service provider who's not a lawyer. And so really starting to build out what the marketing people would call these, client personas is really critical to being able to craft messaging and be where you need to be when they're looking for a lawyer. And we'll talk about some more specifics about that. But right now, if you're following along, start jotting down some ideas about how your clients have found you in the past. Feel free to enter some of those ideas in the chat if you want to make this conversational or ask questions. But it's really, really important to think about how people are looking for lawyers like you, how you're uniquely qualified to help those people, and then helping to put that through in your messaging in a variety of ways that we're going to talk about. But, at the end of the day, this astronaut who's, much smarter than I am, these words really ring true, right? You want to build great client experiences and potential client experiences because they're going to talk about that, right? That's how referrals happen. I had this remarkable experience with this attorney, and it's not always just based on your competence or your experience or how hard you fight. Oftentimes it's, did you empathize with the client? Were you there to answer their questions? Did you stay, in touch with them throughout the process? Did you communicate? Did you set good expectations with them at the beginning of the engagement? And so all of these types of things are the things that you want to be thinking about and really cataloging. How can you reduce the friction for someone that's looking for information about you, making it very easy for them to know what you do, how you help them, why you've chosen this path. That's the kind of stuff that people find as a remarkable experience that they, and they talk about that. And so they're going to have those conversations online, offline, and they're going to be looking for that information when they actually, no matter how they get your name, when they look you up online. That's what we're going to talk about today.
Right. What your
So Nina,
prospects
go ahead. Sorry. Go
Yeah,
ahead. Yeah.
no problem. I like what you said about how you make them feel is what they remember about you. That's what I say too. Their initial interactions with you is a lasting impression, really. And that'll be a good indicator on if they'll want to hire you too, how you made them feel. So that's why it's important to make that client experience enjoyable after they've converted and they've hired you. And maybe there'll be a great reference later on and just bring it full circle to singing your praises online. So a really great way to level up this is this working relationship for both yourself and your client is to use a client portal. So this is a one-stop shop for all things related to their case and reduces that friction that Gyi mentioned. So clients can log in and they can access invoices, meeting information, documents, and messages that you sent them all in one spot. So this can really avoid any communication mishaps that come from, sending random emails here and there, no more chasing down files attached to random emails. It's a more cohesive and up-to-date experience for your client. And it just shows you that you value their security and the privacy of their information so they can feel that you have their backs through this whole process. So you can tie it all together with your logo, your firm's branding, and really customize this experience for them and just leave that long-lasting impression.
No, exactly right. And that's the thing too, that, most of the research that's been coming out in the last, really several years, but really even more so in the last 2 years, especially in the age of COVID, is that legal services consumers have an expectation that you are using technology to communicate, to keep people informed about what's going on in the process of their matter. And, we all know that that's one of the biggest complaints, right? This biggest source of malpractice and grievances is that, they're just not keeping people informed. And so being able to use something like PracticePanther to be able to support you in setting expectations, showing the roadmap of the representation, staying in touch with, making it very easy to stay in touch, document sharing. Like there's really more now of an expectation that there ever has been, especially because, in a lot of contexts, we just can't visit our clients or our potential clients face to face. And so this technology really enables you to deliver a better experience that feeds that marketing plan, right? Because you see this all the time, but people will say things. I mean, I'm in these groups on Facebook with lawyers that are talking to each other, and it's a competitive advantage that you see coming through from clients when you're actually able to stay more in touch with clients. It streamlines the process for you. It's more efficient for you as well, frees up your time. It's a better experience all around. And clients talk about that. You see it in Google My Business reviews. You see it in conversations on social media. That technology and that that experience that you're delivering through technology really plays a big role in the way that word of mouth about your practice spreads. Another person, bald guy that's much smarter than I am. He's been talking a lot about clusters. And so, the idea here is that finding places online that people are aggregating around common passions, right? So maybe you're a local, you serve a local community. Maybe you're passionate about local youth sports, or maybe you work with a nonprofit, or maybe you take a leadership position in some local organization, or you're connected with the local schools or news agencies. Those connections, they're happening online more and more. And so whether it's a private group on Facebook that has people have aggregated around that affinity audience, as the marketing people would call it, or on LinkedIn, finding those places online and connecting there in those clusters and building and creating those relationships and, setting expectations that people can connect with you and getting them into a tool like PracticePanther so you can stay in connection with them. That's really what we're talking about here. We're reducing that friction, finding audiences online, and then engaging in conversations to nurture those relationships for it. And we'll talk more about the details about how to do this, but I really do think it's important for us, when getting in the right mindset for this, to remember that finding these people that are in your audience, whether it's in real life or online, and really both. I think that's another mistake a lot of people make, is trying to make a decision between like, oh, I'm going to do in-person networking. You can do both, right? Someone you meet in real life, follow up with me and connect with them on LinkedIn. I know a lot of lawyers that are passionate about, whether it's like maybe they like to eat, they're foodies, right? So they're out in the Chicago food scene. Well, there are groups on Facebook that are celebrating food. Participating there, meeting people there, connecting with them there, that's really the starting point for creating these relationships. And so I always say this, and I'm not a francophone, so I apologize if there are any francophones listening in, but plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose, which is, the more things change, the more they stay the same. So even though Nina and I are going to talk about a lot of the technology and the more advanced ways that you can stay in touch with people, at the end of the day, the business of law is still really about relationships and reputation. And so what these technologies allow you to do is they allow you to build more relationships and demonstrate your expertise for remarkable client service, which helps that reputation evidence grow, and that's word of mouth, right? And so that's what we're going to dive into.
And so, following up and just keeping in touch with whether they're a potential customer or a current customer tends to get deprioritized over time. Lawyers are busy. We all tend to deprioritize having to follow up, but having an ability to automate some of this can really create a great client experience. And workflows is the answer here. Workflows allow you to automate the creation of tasks and events on your calendar and assign whoever in your firm to be responsible for it. So you can also preset reminders in the form of a text or an email or a pop-up. So imagine you get 20 potential clients that have the same introductory steps and follow-ups and events that need to take place. Rather than having to start each of these cases from scratch, you can actually set a workflow to preset exactly what needs to be done and by who, and just let the software automate everything else. So this really helps reduce any errors or miscommunication that might come up between your client or anyone else at your firm. And you're always a step ahead of everything that needs to be done, just really honing in on creating that great experience for your clients.
No, exactly right. And one of the other contexts that I love the workflow is, we talk about these affinity audiences. Well, say you have a leadership position at some kind of local organization, or even if you're it's a national professional organization, and there's people that are members of that organization that they're going to be there's an event coming up, or you have a speaking opportunity, and you want to reach out to people and see if they're going to that event. That kind of thing can be automated with a workflow, trigger-based. Maybe it fires off a message or fires off a text to say, hey, I wanted to check in and see if you're going to be heading to the, whatever organization meeting. But just a really great way to automate some of that communication and top-of-mind awareness with referral sources, colleagues, potential clients. And of course, as Nina mentioned, great in the context of keeping clients informed of what's going on and reducing those back and forths and emails and mistakes and just missed opportunities really overall. Okay. So Google My Business. So, kind of getting into the more marketing aspect. I mentioned this at the outset, but, more and more, no matter how people hear about you, they're more and more likely to go online to look you up. And Google My Business, you can just search for Google My Business, a free tool, but it commands a ton of real estate for searches on your name. Here's an example from my friend, Steve Gersten. That big box on the right there that's got the red highlight around it, that's the information populated by Google My Business. And then the theme of reducing friction and providing information, look what we see here. We've got pictures of the attorney. If you click into the profile, you can have add video content there, service options, your availability for online appointments or on site. It's got address, it's got your hours. There's health and safety information in light of COVID, phone number, appointment setting URL, questions and answers. All of these things help to reduce that friction for when people get your name, they're referred to your name, or they're looking you up online to make that experience more seamless. And again, talking about how the intersection of practice management and marketing, that appointment URL can go right into a PracticePanther form and populate a workflow, right? So now you're automating and reducing the friction between that search, a click, and then entering an onboarding workflow in your practice management tool. Just another example. So in Michigan, you can have trade names, but for Google My Business, the guidelines are you get a listing for every office location, you get a listing for each practitioner or lawyer at your firm, and just think about the impression that this leaves for people that are looking for information about you. You can see Google reviews, you can see what other clients have to say, and again, reduce that friction from search to contact. Just one more example for you. Notice that this listing will also sometimes populate reviews from around the web. So, it's validating to be thinking, hey, even if you don't use Facebook yourself, having a Facebook page where happy clients sing your praises, that's going to highlight for that next person who's looking for you. Make it very easy for people to find evidence of your reputation for providing great service to other clients. That's really that's cornerstone of your marketing plan. So a quick Google 101 for folks that they've never even considered this marketing stuff with Google before. We're really focused on affordable ways that you can market on Google. And so ads, as you probably heard, can get pretty expensive. In certain practice areas, clicks can get, be hundreds of dollars. That local pack, that blue area, you don't pay Google for that, right? Google's going to generate those listings organically. I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do that. The people also ask section. That's another place where Google uses their system data to populate other questions that they see regularly asked on a similar search. And then you have your traditional organic results. So we're really going to focus on the blue section today, but I wanted to at least outline that green and yellow section. The people also ask can be a great area for inspiration for content development, because if other people are asking that question of Google, that might be something you want to have on your site. And of course, traditional organic results, which we could spend a lot of time talking about. But because the local pack has such visibility, especially for searches on your name and your firm's name, that's really where I start my focus. And if you do nothing else, consider Google My Business for your firm. I think that's really a valuable tool. Just another example. This is with local services ads at the top, so you see those. But again, in terms of reputational evidence, you've got reviews right there. You've got years in practice. That's another. It's a pay-per-lead ad platform. So if you're a little bit reluctant to do cost per click, you might consider checking out local services ads. They show up very prominently on search results. But again, if you're on more of a budget, we're going to talk local pack and how to influence those results. So this is really our focus today, local pack. This is for what marketing people would call a non-brand search query. So it's practice area plus lawyers, personal injury lawyers. And you should be doing these searches for your own practice area and permutations on your practice area plus lawyers, attorneys, law firm. Get a sense of what folks are seeing there, because ultimately this is the competitive landscape for when people are searching. When they don't know a lawyer, right? Or they're reluctant to get a referral. They're the other half of people that are doing searches on their own. This is what they're going to see in these local areas. And so see how you stack up against the competition. How long have you been in business? How many reviews do you have? What's your overall score? Are you offering on-site services? Do you offer online appointments? That's all going to play a role in that next client's mind. Same thing for on mobile. So this is pulled from a mobile result. Keep in mind that Google My Business has filters. And so, availability online, proximity, whether or not you're open, your ratings. When users click on those filters, it's going to impact the listings that come up. And so again, if you're on your phone right now and you're listening along, check out what these results look like on your phone and see how you stack up, and start adding those things to your marketing plan of like, hey, how are we going to deliver better service and create a process to help nurture people through to leaving a review, to contacting us and staying in touch with them. Okay, so that's kind of a layout of the Google My Business landscape. Of course, everybody wants to know, how do I rank better in Google? How do I get those listings? And Google really provides all sorts of great information in their Google My Business Help Center. Again, links available for you, but if you just search for Google My Business Help, they talk about all the factors that they use. But there's really three big buckets, and they are relevance, distance, and prominence. And so I think it's worth parsing through each of these. Relevance is just refers to how well your firm matches what someone's searching for, right? So the more complete information you can add to your profile and around the web, that's what Google's going to use for that matching. They're going to, if it's search for personal injury lawyer, they're going to look, do you have the same category? Do you have content on your site that's talking about personal injury? Do you have reviews that are talking about personal injury? Do you have questions and answers that are talking about personal injury? And again, my point here is not to tell you to go out and spam your listing with just, put personal injury everywhere. Google's a little bit more sophisticated in that. So you want to make sure that it's natural in the way that you're talking about these topics. But keep in mind that these keywords, they do play a role. But more important than even the keywords from Google's perspective, if you just plug personal injury everywhere without a little bit more explanation, a little bit more nuance, and a little bit more eloquence, it's going to turn off your potential client, right? It's going to look like some spammy listing. So I don't encourage you to do that. The second one is distance. So distance is just basically a measure of how far you are from either the searcher or what they're looking for, right? So if you have a geo-modified search like Chicago personal injury lawyer, Google's going to be more inclined to show results for Chicago personal injury lawyers than they are for, say, New York personal injury lawyers. The challenge with distance is that you can't really impact distance, right? Unless you're going to open a new office or move your office locations. And we could talk about all the strategic decision-making that goes into choosing an office location from a Google standpoint. But I tell people all the time, look, proximity matters to consumers, right? And, lawyers, especially in the PI space, they think, oh, well, for the right case, I would travel anywhere in the state and I can, serve clients throughout the state. But your clients are probably looking for somebody closer to them. In fact, Google even nudges clients through auto-suggest to search for like lawyers near me, right? And so proximity makes a big difference, but you should be thinking about that in the context of where your clients are and who you're helping, the community you're serving. If you're in downtown Chicago and you're trying to serve clients downstate, Google My Business is going to be a challenging vehicle for you to be able to utilize without opening an office downstate. So just something to think about that plays a big role in the results that Google serves. And then finally, prominence. And prominence is basically, quote unquote authority. It's all the stuff we hear when we talk SEO, things like links back to your website, articles that mention you, getting your listing information right in prominent directories, especially legal directories. They mention review count and review score factoring in. It's all the SEO kind of stuff that you can do. And that's really the thing that you can influence the most. If you want to go deep on all of this local SEO stuff, WhiteSpark does an annual local search ranking factors survey where people that do this for a living talk about the things that they're seeing work. And I put the link in there. But as you can see, it's not a big surprise. It's heavy on links. It's heavy on things like on-page optimizations, like including keywords in your page titles and your heading tags and using them throughout your site. There's all sorts of other things you can do in terms of optimizing your profile. But the real big message here is to fill out those profiles as completely as you possibly can. Don't leave empty fields. Don't use one-word answers. Fill those description fields out and maximize them. And again, just kind of looking at some of the major ranking factors here, getting that category right. We'll talk a little bit about categories. If you're able to change your firm name to include keywords. So I gave the example of Michigan Auto Law. It's got location and practice keywords in the firm name. That's the official business name. Those types of things can go a long way to improving your visibility in GMB. Questions and answers. So one of the things that folks don't realize about the question and answer section is that as a business owner, you can actually seed questions. So you can actually ask a question and then answer the question. That's how this would end up looking. They don't publish that the person who posted the question. They do publish you as the owner, and you should respond as the owner of the business. But all those kind of frequently asked questions that you get, those are the types of things you might consider putting in, seeding your Q&A section on your GMB profile. Again, back to that great experience. Make it easy for them to understand who you help, how you're uniquely qualified to help. Maybe you put some driving directions in there if that's a source of frustration. Maybe you talk about some things you've published or leadership positions you've taken or community service that you participate in. Those are all the types of things that form a great first impression for people that are looking you up by name. Another free tool is called Marketing Kit now. It used to be share or something with Google. I'm blanking on it, but it's Google Marketing Kit. It's free. Basically, what it does is it allows you to turn your your reviews on Google into very prominent, visible posters and social media icons that you can use in Google My Business. So it really jumps off the page. You can use them on other social profiles, and if you want, if you have people come to your office, you can print them out and put them as posters. Think about the impact of people that are coming into your foyer. In addition to all of the other accolades that you probably include there, having actual client testimonials visually depicted really jumps out and helps validate your expertise for delivering great service. If you use those in Google My Business in a post, this will actually show up in that post feed in that knowledge panel for searches on your name. And so and it jumps off the page. A Google search result, for the most part, it's a lot of white space. And so any kind of color you can add to your profile there, I think it really does attract eyeballs and clicks. Another thing you can do with Google Posts is, publishing articles of you talking about, your services, what you do. And again, I'm not talking about giving legal advice here, but, maybe it's like factors you should be thinking about in hiring attorneys or attorneys like you, or maybe there's something specific about your practice area that you have a blog post about. If you include that in a post, what will happen is you can get these little enhancements. And so if you see that little exclamation mark next to how should you hire a digital marketing agency, is just an example of our business, that will actually show up in your Google My Business listing in that local pack. And that's very compelling from a way to stand out from your competition. We'll talk a little bit more about some of the ways you can convert more clicks from your Google My Business post, but that post feature with your actual content is a really great way to enhance your listings. And this is just an example of how those posts show up. So when someone searches on our, in this example, legal marketing, our listing would come up in the Finder, and then you can see those posts showing up in the Finder there. And those are really great ways to position your firm, whether it's giving back to the community. This is an example for Michigan Auto Law. They offer a scholarship. Got a lot of information that people that for the types of clients that they serve that might be interested in. You can test different variations off of these posts. Really, really impactful in terms of getting someone who's searching on your name to demonstrate your expertise, demonstrate your care for your audience, and show what you're all about. So again, the big takeaways here are making sure that you're seeding those Q&As, adding photos. It's very image driven. Those images really jump off the page. Again, we're not talking stock images here. Prefer pictures of attorneys, team members with client consent. We love seeing actual pictures of attorneys with their clients, or video testimonials with clients. Again, get consent. Check your state bar rules. Some state bars are a little bit tricky with how you actually publish client testimonials. But this is the kind of stuff that really validates your commitment to remarkable service. This is how word of mouth is going to spread. It's going to motivate more people to contact you through these profiles. Another big thing we talk about, and I think this is another place that PracticePanther can help a lot with, is really tracking performance, right? Tracking, if I'm going to spend time and money on this stuff, how do we connect the dots from those dollars and those hours all the way back to fees? And so something like PracticePanther's intake process that I'll let Nina talk about can really be helpful there.
Right. And the fastest way to really convert someone is to give them the means to self-service and take that initiative first, right? And working with you should be extremely easy and a seamless experience to get started. And you want to keep track of everyone that's coming through. So how are you going to manage these clients both internally and externally? Who will have ownership over them? And how are we giving a good impression to these new potential clients throughout this whole process? So this takes me to the client intake form, which are just digital forms that you can create and send out directly to your clients. You can add it to your website or an email with a hyperlink. You could probably add it to your Google My Business profile too. So if you're in person, you can load it up on maybe an iPad, go paperless, and just provide a tech-forward experience, forego the bad handwriting and streamline the process. That takes away 15 minutes just going over general information and saves time for your initial meeting to be about what they want to really talk about. So you can customize these intake forms with your logo, cohesively, just having your firm branding, and reassure your client that you're not here to waste their time. You're not here to waste your own time. you're tech savvy, you value their information and their privacy. And you can even create forms for follow-ups after and customize them to serve your team. So being able to learn and mold a tool to how your firm works is really the key to getting adoption from the rest of your team. So we built PracticePanther to be fully customizable to your firm, and we just continue to build out features that are simple and user-friendly while providing support in case you need it. So you don't have to reinvent your practice.
Yeah, and I love that. And I just to reiterate what Nina said, using a form like this for your your appointment URL in Google My Business, instead of having to say, hey, I have to be on demand to answer my phone, and somebody should always be answering your phone, but giving potential clients and clients a variety of ways to contact you in a way that's very efficient for them. So instead of having to just have a phone number where someone calls and maybe they got to take a message, or they're leaving, God forbid they have to leave a voice message, you can onboard and automate this process for appointment setting. You don't have to go back and forth in scheduling. You don't have to send a bunch of emails. You can literally from that search, they click a button, they land on this form, the information sent, a workflow for onboarding started. That's what we're talking about in converting more of those potential clients into clients, making things very frictionless for them. Really, really powerful way to do that. Needless to say, you should also be tracking your phone calls. In Google My Business, you can use a call tracking number. That way you can hold the performance of your Google My Business listing accountable independently from other pages of your site, or different campaigns and sources and channels that people might be contacting you. This is kind of the best practice on how to do this. For years, the local SEO community was very concerned about NAP consistency, and that basically means having your name, address, and phone consistent across the web, and that still is important. But we found over the last several years that if you use a dedicated call tracking number as the primary phone number in your Google My Business listing, and your actual local business number as the additional phone number, no problem. And then again, now you can track phone calls directly from searches. And this is another thing that a lot of lawyers don't realize, but people will call directly from the profile. They never even get through to your website, right? So they might click that call button, or they might click that appointment URL button, which takes them directly to a form without ever getting to your website. And so I always find it interesting, lawyers spend a lot of time and money getting those websites right, but a lot of these first impressions and potential client inquiries, they're happening before those clients even get to your website. So keep that in mind and set up systems to be able to track that. Speaking of clicks, some people will click through, right? So for those folks, you want to actually measure your Google My Business listings performance independently there. You need to add URL parameters. That's basically that highlighted yellow gobbledygook there. Essentially what that's going to do is going to tell things like Google Analytics and other machine software, PracticePanther too, or Search Console, how people are finding your site. And if you use this particular UTM parameter, you can isolate that GMB listing website click. You can do the same thing for appointment URLs if you're going to drive back to your actual website with a form, or if you're going to use a post, add those UTM parameters to your post so you can track the clicks and performance of those posts. There's a free tool to be able to do this. There's actually some documentation from Google on how to do this. I mean, it's kind of ubiquitous. These UTM parameters there's all sorts of information everywhere about them, but I wanted to give you at least one tool to be able to help you do that yourself. And this is where you'd implement that in the URL field, or in the appointment set field, or if there's a field for a URL in your Google My Business posts. And again, what that allows you to do, this is an example of it tracking the referrer information from a click from Google My Business back to the website with the campaign GMB. And so now you can say, hey, for people that saw my Google My Business listing, clicked through to my website, and called me from my website, I can track those calls as well independently from a variety of other sources. And we like to set this up in Google Analytics as well. So, if you want to see directional movement for things like phone calls and form fills and live chat requests, you can configure Google Analytics to show those goals. And so you can isolate that Google My Business listings performance and really get a sense of whether your time and money is well invested there. And getting it down to we know that these phone calls came specifically from a live chat request from somebody who came through our Google My Business listing. Really, really powerful granular tracking to close the loop on your marketing. And PracticePanther can help with that too.
Right. And as each platform has its own analytics and dashboards, you can aggregate all that data directly in PracticePanther by using tags. So you can think of tags as custom categories that you can assign on a contact or a matter, or even on activities. But the real beauty of consistently using tags is that you'll then be able to create a custom report and dive into the data to see the ROI of your marketing campaigns and the sources your leads are coming from, be it partner referral or social media or these ads. So I highly recommend that you tag your leads by their marketing sources and if they became a client or not. So that way you can measure and track which sources gave you the most qualified leads and adjust your tactics. This is a great way to keep a pulse on your marketing efforts and just have it all directly in PracticePanther where you keep everything else related to the case. So if you start using tags consistently, you could run a report like, I didn't see any qualified leads from my Facebook ads recently, but the majority have been coming from my Google ads. So then you'll know to move that budget you have for Facebook and invest more into your Google ads. So you can be in front of more of your potential qualified customers coming to your website and setting those calls. So this is not costing you any more money, right? You're just seeing the returns of your consistent tracking and analysis by landing more of those qualified leads. And you're just really shifting your focus on your marketing campaigns to work for you. You're showing up more frequently where your most qualified leads are and in those clusters, as Gyi mentioned earlier. And the level of detail you want to extract out of the platform is up to you. It's fully customizable and flexible.
Yeah, as a marketing agency person, this is so key because if you're working with an agency or you're working with some kind of digital expert or you have a in-house marketing director, marketing folks, they'll tend to focus on those front end marketing metrics, right? So they'll talk about like, oh, your organic traffic's up or your average position for these queries is up. But the only way that you can really do things like return on investment analysis or return on ad spend analysis or target cost per client analysis is to marry those front-end marketing metrics with your back-end business metrics. In this instance, that's where PracticePanther really shines from a marketing perspective, because now you can follow those potential clients all the way through their journey as clients, all the way to the fee that's generated. And now you can actually connect, okay, we know that this source, this campaign, this time and money that I spent actually turned into a fee. And then as Nina mentioned, you can deploy and adjust your resources to maximize those sources that are really the best in terms of return. Another great thing about using the UTM parameters in your Google My Business listing is that you can isolate those listings in Search Console. So Search Console is another free tool from Google. It's basically your window into their system data for organic, but again, it's just Google organic. It's not from social media or not from email, but right from those organic listings. And if you add that UTM parameter that we talked about earlier, you can look at just Google My Business performance. And so then you can see the queries that people used to find your business. So you know that these queries have value. And again, if you connect all this together, you can start to model out that, hey, I know that when people search on these queries, it results in these clicks, it results in these form fills and these phone calls. And if you connect it all the way back to PracticePanther, now you can really close the loop and understand like, oh, these organic searches that populated my Google My Business listing are driving this % of our revenue. Let's double down on that. It's also great for inspiration. I think I mentioned this with people also ask, but it's a great content inspiration tool, right? So if you don't have these positions today, maybe you're missing some of these queries on your site. And so maybe you need to include those, whether it's in a page title or on a practice area page. You can also mine these queries for question words like, who, what, where, when, how, and you'll see the types of things people are asking. That's the kind of stuff you want to be using in the Q&A in your Google My Business listing and in frequently asked question sections on your website. Okay, so that kind of rounds out the how to rank better. Now we want to talk about, now when you have those positions, how do you convert more of those impressions into clicks, calls, and clients? So when we talk conversions, marketing people talk conversions, you're basically just talking about the number of impressions by the number of whatever interaction you're trying to measure. So if you're talking about how many conversions I have from, a search to a call, you just take the number of times your listing showed up and divide that by the number of times you actually got that call. You can apply this kind of conversion thinking to leads. You can apply it to target open cases. There's a whole bunch of contexts you can use it in, but when you cut through all the marketing noise, what you're really trying to do is you're going to say, hey, how can I make my listing on Google stand out from the competition? And so we really talk about 4 big things here. The first is reviews. That should be a no-brainer. Finding ways to deliver remarkable experiences that get more people singing your praises, whether it's because you're, just delivering great legal services, or you're providing them a remarkable client experience. That should really be the focus, because reviews is going to make the biggest difference. Second is the category. Best practice here, and from my perspective, is set your primary category as specific as possible. Feel free to add some additional categories, especially the more general categories below that. But really, you want to make sure that primary category is the most specific. And the reason for that is if your category doesn't match, you can think about in this context, someone's searching for a Chicago divorce lawyer. If your category shows up as personal injury or some other category, it's unlikely someone's going to click through because it doesn't match the query that they're searching. The third one's hours. And so the more that you can extend your hours of operation, whether that's through a virtual assistant or, you have different ways that you can actually field inquiries and provide service in extended hours, that makes a big difference, because if someone searches and it shows you're closed, think about how likely they are to contact you versus the competition. And then we talked a little bit about enhancements. Google My Business added all these COVID enhancements for like online appointment setting. But there's all sorts of other things you can do through posts and highlighting information on your website that will show up in those enhancements. And so again, always, perform these searches, see what your competition is doing, and then find ways to optimize your profile and your listing to be more competitive, to attract more of those clicks and eyeballs. Just another example, just give you a sense of, years comparisons on years in business, the lack of on-site services, online appointments. These all play a role in the impression that you're making and the likelihood that someone's going to actually click or call and convert from a search to a client for your firm. And bring it back to the filters. That's another one too that can be a huge competitive advantage, especially if you have more positive ratings than your competition. But a lot of times too, we see this all the time. Like just being open additional hours can be huge, because when someone searches on off hours, if your competition's closed and you're open, even if you're not as competitive on reviews or you're not as competitive on other factors, being open when they're looking can make a huge impact on your ability to convert that attention into a phone call, potential client, and eventually a client. One final note I wanted to make here on the messaging feature. So Google My Business has a messaging feature. There's some issues about how that feature works and how you're going to field it. But again, if you're talking about reducing the friction, especially if you serve a younger audience, folks expect to be able to interact with you on these messaging apps, whether it's through Google My Business or a Facebook messaging app. And so finding ways to incorporate that into your workflow and finding ways to make that work with your practice management tool and your onboarding process is really, really effective in increasing conversions, especially if your competition isn't doing it. Make it easy for them to schedule an appointment with you. Make it so they don't even have to leave the app or leave the experience. There's all sorts of ways you can implement this, but I just wanted to highlight this because I know a lot of lawyers don't take advantage of this, and it really is effective in terms of especially audiences that prefer to interact this way. You're just leaving opportunity on the table if you're making it too hard to contact you. So that was really all we had. Love to hear some questions, or feel free to share experiences in the chat. Otherwise, Nina, if you want to talk about your demo.
Yeah, sure. So I just want to say thank you again for joining our live stream. I know we covered a lot of golden nuggets here, but if you're interested in getting started with PracticePanther, you can get a custom and free demo at practicepanther.com/demo. And Gyi, it looks like you have one for yourself as well.
Yeah, again, thank you so much for attending, and love to the opportunity to take a look at what you're doing online. For all attendees, we're offering a free web presence audit, so you just go to Attorney Sync and just let us know that you attended the Practice Panther webinar and you're interested in a free web audit, and we'd be happy to take a look at your Google My Business listing, your website, a bunch of different data points that we use to kind of give you a sense of kind of where you stand in the marketplace.
Awesome. Well, it actually looks like we're at time for today, but we'll get to your questions directly afterwards. Thank you again, Gyi, so much for just sharing your knowledge with us, and I hope everyone has a great rest of their day.
Thanks, Nina. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Gyi. Bye.